Hi, on today's episode, I spoke with author, entrepreneur, founder of the Forward Party, and former presidential candidate Andrew Yang. You might remember Andrew from his 2020 presidential run when he brought the concept of a universal basic income into the political discourse. As you can imagine, the idea of $1,000 a month into the pockets of every American really got people talking. And even though he didn't win the presidential ticket, that hasn't stopped him from generating idea after idea for how to make our democracy better. Some might even say trying to help us reclaim democracy. So I wanted to talk to Andrew because he has this infectious optimism, even in this chaotic time we're living in. It's like hope and humanity mixed with intellect and innovation. You'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, I hope you find something in our chat to connect to, and thanks so much for joining us on Reclaiming. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Audible. Love getting lost in heart-pounding stories? Audible delivers thrills of every kind. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat today. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/reclaiming. Thank you to our exclusive fashion partner, Reformation. I honestly can't tell you how many of their pieces have become my go-to favorites. Their sweaters have this incredible way of being both polished and comfortable. And in fact, when we recorded my own reclaiming story for the podcast, I was wearing the same Reformation sweater as the producer interviewing me, but thankfully we had the Clara on in different colors. Their clothes work for all moments in my life, whether it's a casual day out or a more formal occasion. I always find myself reaching for my Reformation pieces. Visit reformation.com to see why they're one of my favorite brands for stylish and sustainable fashion. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Monica. Good to see you again.
You too. I was thinking about that we had, I think, initially connected on Twitter, and then I met you and your wife in person when you spoke at TED last year.
Yep.
And gave such a dynamic talk that
was, thank you.
Yeah, very persuasive. What interested me was when I was kind of cooking up the idea for this podcast, I really wanted a very elastic definition of reclaiming, and so that it wasn't necessarily just a kind of comeback story per se, but, you know, for me, it's my reclaiming my narrative and my voice, and for some people, it's health or a family heirloom. And you really have done this amazing thing in that you're trying to help us. You're trying to help
That's very
us
sweet of you.
Reclaim, you know, decency and democracy.
Yeah, it's certainly a goal. Mm-hmm. You know, and when you mentioned my TED Talk, you know, I had a very, very clear ambition with it and message, but it didn't work. I mean, honestly, it didn't work.
Okay, wait. First of all, you really sort of presented these, what I remember from it was you presented these two different areas, one being open primaries, right?
Yep.
And then the other being the ranked choice voting.
Yep. The talk I gave was about how we have very, very negative incentives in our political system, because if you're an office holder, you imagine that the office holder's job is to make 51% of us happy. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the time, that's not actually what their incentive is. Their incentive is to keep the base and the primary electorate happy and off their backs, which typically is like 10% or so of the population.
Huh.
And the numbers I used in the TED Talk, I'm going to re-give my TED Talk now, but that members of Congress nationwide, or Congress as a body, has a 17% approval rating, but a re-election rate of 94% for individual members.
Right.
Because the individual member tends to represent like a district that's quite blue or quite red. Mm-hmm. And then they have the primary electorate on their side, and so then they can coast. Mm-hmm. And so the argument I made, which is borne out in math because I'm a numbers guy, is that we'd have better incentives for those elected officials if you had an open primary system where people could vote regardless of party, and then you had ranked choice voting, because that tends to lead you toward this broad collegial consensus. Mm-hmm. And to your point, it would improve our politics, because all of a sudden you'd be rewarding folks for doing the right thing and working with each other, as opposed to right now, it's become very nasty and polarized.
Yeah. I was thinking about with what you're saying, the 94% reelection rate. Do you think, I'm now realizing I'm going to use this whole podcast to pitch all my cockamamie political ideas.
Please, it's your podcast. I mean,
no, but
they'll get them all eventually.
do you feel like if we had term limits in Congress, that might shift people's sort of incentive to for job stability? You know, we can acknowledge the ego and let it be about legacy. And so legacy coming from what they're actually accomplishing versus maybe how long they've been in office, which I think sometimes is part of what happens, right?
Look, I'm pro term limits for a few reasons. Number one, people know that there's something of a gerontocracy in this country, which is our leaders are very, very old.
Yeah.
The average member of Congress is, I want to say, 58. The average senator is maybe 64. And that's an average. And so if you look at leadership, it tends to be older than that. So number one, most Americans are like, hey, you know, I'd like our folks to be a little more representative, but also you'd like them to have this approach of, look, let me get some stuff done and then come home, because it's not that DC is meant to be like a multi-decade long career. Unfortunately, in our current system, as soon as you get there, you want to stay there. Your biggest fear is being sent home. I was with one senator whom I love, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who, by the way, voted against some of these cabinet appointees.
Right. Well, she's Republican.
Yes, she's a Republican, but she voted to impeach Trump. She's very, very principled. She voted against Pete Hegseth, like the rest of it. And then she said, look, I actually like my home and like my family. And if my worst case scenario is I get sent there, I'm fine. But she's highly, highly unusual in that system, because most of them really, really don't want to be sent home and kind of cling to office. And I think term limits would change that. But a third argument for why term limits is something we should be looking at is that 3/4 of Americans want it. And so if you believe in will of the people and democracy and the rest of it, and 75% of Americans say, you know, I'd like folks to come home after a certain period of time, we should probably do it.
Yeah. I mean, I actually am a big believer in that. I think the presidency should be 1 6-year term, because I think then that we'd eliminate that middle portion of campaigning for reelection, right?
Yeah,
and
or Supreme Court justices 18 years.
Yeah,
I mean, there's absolutely no reason why it should be a lifetime appointment.
Agreed. Just walking back, you said you were a math guy, but you were a corporate lawyer. So where does the math guy come from? What drew you to corporate law initially?
Sure. So wow, you want me to nerd out a little bit?
Of course.
So my dad was or is happily still with us.
Yeah.
My dad is a PhD in physics.
Okay.
He generated 69 U.S. patents for GE and IBM. His main area of innovation was liquid crystal displays, which are what made all the TVs flat and all of our little screens.
Plasma. No, that's
it's
different.
It's the technology after plasma.
Okay.
My mom has a master's in math and statistics, so I was like a very, very nerdy kid. I did go to law school. I practiced for 5 whole months before leaving. And then I worked in various small growth companies for a number of years. But natively, I've always liked numbers. I kind of was against the stereotype of folks who went to law school who didn't like math and numbers. I actually kind of always liked them. Like, I like Excel as a program.
Okay, you are a nerd for sure.
I ran for president as a Democratic candidate.
Right. So in 2020, you ran,
2020.
and you had no experience in politics before, or
that is generally correct. Yeah, generally correct. Yeah, and so it's been a fascinating journey, Monica, because I think that my approach to things is distinct from most political figures, because most political figures are personality and narrative driven. And it was a real learning process for me to even be performing in that space. But I'm going to give you an example of something that the numbers bear out right now very powerfully. The Democrats right now have virtually no path to win a majority of the U.S. Senate. Based upon the map and the numbers.
Okay.
And so right now, if you argue for the Democratic, and won't shock anyone, I'm no fan of Trump, and I endorse Kamala, and all these things. But the Democrats just lost Senate seats in Ohio and West Virginia. if you like think about it, like, do you see them getting those seats back anytime soon? No. I mean, those states have gone red. They're down 53-47 in the Senate. 3 of their incumbent senators have just declared they're retiring rather than run again. And the map right now is favorable to Republicans because the majority of the country now is red, really. And so the odds of them somehow reversing a 53-47 deficit are essentially zero. There is no democratic path back to taking a majority of both houses. And so they're not going to be able to pass laws as currently constituted. And, whether that makes you happy or sad, I mean, that's just the way the map and the numbers are. So what I've been working on to me, it's like the only pragmatic approach is you need a new political entity to contest states like Kansas and Nebraska and Utah and Alaska, where a Democrat could not compete. But if you were to have an independent run, they could be competitive.
When you're talking about an independent, is it the views that someone holds being more reflective of an independent, or is it that we've become so polarized and so stuck to titles and names and party affiliation and tribes that it could be, if that independent had the same policies almost indistinct from a Democrat, do you think that makes the difference? Am I making sense? Do you know what I'm asking?
It makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you look at, like, I went to Brown University, very liberal school, was living and working here in New York. So was a registered Democrat since the 90s, ran for president as a Democrat, didn't think much of it because it was like obvious to me. It's like, but I concluded after some research, because I'm kind of a nerd, so I went and looked at the data and the trends and everything. And I concluded that the two-party system was not working very well and was going to work worse into the future. And so then I said, you know what? Like, we need a different approach if we're going to get the results that we want. And so if you were to ask me about any of a host of issues, you could probably find my perspective, but it probably lines up with a Democrat on just about any social issue you could name, just about, like a lot of the fiscal stuff. It's just I happen to have concluded that the current system is not going to get us there. It's that the current system is actually, diluting popular will through this kind of funhouse mirror system, and the output is something that most of us like, wait a minute, that's like nothing at all what I ordered. But to your point, so an independent can run the gamut. I mean, independents come in all shapes and sizes. I will say, though, that at this point, independents are about 50% of the population and rising. It's maybe
really?
2/3.
50%?
Yeah. If you look it up right now, like the Democratic Party, I mean, you live in LA, so it seems sky high, but the Democratic Party nationally is down to maybe 25% identification. Republican Party is a little bit lower than that. It might be something like 23%. So independents are now 50% and growing. Among young people, it's more like 2/3. 2/3 don't think the two-party system works. Yeah. And so the Forward Party, what we do is we try and help independent political figures compete against whichever party is dominant. And we kind of joke about it. It's like independents tend not to like to clump together because they're independents. But what we're trying to do is build like a collection of independents who want to reform the system.
Are you saying that you're kind of a old-fashioned moderate Democrat? Is that, or it's no, your views are different than that?
Well, again, if you were to line me up with an old-fashioned moderate Democrat and like have a punch list of issues, we probably line up on the vast majority of things. I just don't think that the Democratic Party can actually deliver as presently constituted. And if you were to ask like whose fault is it, it's like, well, I mean, the fact is there's nothing in the Constitution about any political party. It kind of got invented later and then enforced at the state level, which is one reason why the reforms that we're looking at. Oh yeah, like there's nothing in the Constitution about. By the way, the founding fathers actually hated the idea of political parties generally and the two-party system in particular. I think it was John Adams who said a two-party system would be a great evil across the land, and I think we're probably living a version of that. and so if you look at the way that the two-party system first came about and then was implemented and enforced. It's a bunch of rules and regulations at the state level.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you ran in 2020. You did not have a political background. What was the period right before you deciding to run?
What the heck did Andrew Yang do before he showed up on the TV screen? Yeah,
had the Yang Gang.
Yeah, indeed. So, corporate lawyer briefly, failed entrepreneur, and then more successful entrepreneur. I guess that's like about a decade. And then I started a nonprofit to help train young entrepreneurs that was operating primarily in Detroit, Cleveland, New Orleans, Baltimore, Birmingham, places like primarily in the Midwest and the South, which is how I had some insight when Trump won in 2016 that we had done away with 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. And then Trump won all those places because of what we did to those manufacturing communities. So I was a serial entrepreneur, do-gooder before I turned to politics. And my decision to run for president was born of the decision I made years earlier in 2011 to start an organization called Venture for America, because my hope was to try and revitalize the American economy through entrepreneurship. And I concluded that with the advent of AI, we were going to need much bigger changes to humanize the economy. And the only way to make those changes would be to get a hold of the federal government. So then I looked and saw what the rules were for running for president and, decided to run. At the time, people, when I said I'm running for president, they would respond but then
how about your family? Like, how was this a big discussion with your wife and your kids?
So you've met Evelyn, but
she's amazing.
But we joke that that I'm lucky, and maybe she's lucky that she didn't take it very seriously at first. So she's like, "That's nice,
right?"
Yeah. It's like, "Oh, sure." She says that it got real for her when I quit my job at the time. And it was like, wait, what's going on? But she's obviously been a tremendous partner and champion through it all.
I think one of the things, I had not heard of universal basic income before you ran.
Yep.
But it had been around for a while as a concept. And I know in your book that you wrote in 2018, I think, right?
Yep.
Remind me the name.
That's right. The War of Normal People.
Yes. Well, first of all, can you just, explain universal basic income?
Sure, I would be glad to. So it's an idea that's been around for a long time. Thomas Paine was for it. Martin Luther King actually was advocating for it when he was assassinated.
Wow.
But it's a policy that says every member of a society gets a certain amount of money for basic needs, no questions asked. And so the number I was running on was $1,000 a month. And for folks who, want a sense of things, the U.S. economy now is pushing 29 to 30 trillion. It's about $82,000 per person, which means that you have $12,000 per person if you wanted to, and that you would get a lot of the money back in terms of both cost savings and better outcomes in healthcare and education, less on homelessness, less on incarceration. And those institutions are very, very expensive. So I sat down and worked the numbers, and you could easily do it, and you'd get all of the money back, maybe even more, if you made some assumptions about business formation and economic growth.
Yeah. Well, and also, too, we tend to not put a cost on these things that we can't see or touch in a way, in terms of, I think, like,
totally, yeah.
Right? Like in terms of mental health and physical
Yes.
health. It is something that makes a lot of sense to me. UBI, and I think about it with AI.
Yeah,
a lot
AI is
too.
going to eat the jobs. I mean, it
Right.
genuinely
And-
is. And when I was running on that back then, the farmers of Iowa would look at me and be like, interesting.
Yeah.
But now, yeah, I mean, we're experiencing this mindset of scarcity that, in my opinion, got Donald Trump elected and is tearing families and communities apart in different ways. I'm so glad that you, I mean, it doesn't surprise me because you're a very sophisticated, elevated human. But it does break my heart, Monica, that there's so much needless suffering, really. And again, like when I was running, I was like, look, I can actually show you the numbers. Like, we spend this much on education and incarceration, all these things. And you would end up getting a lot of the value back. But what you said about the intangibles is 100% correct. It's like, what dollar sign would you put on folks feeling good about the future? What dollar sign would you put on people feeling like they could be generous with each other? And the scarcity mindset, in my view, is just getting stronger all the time because AI is decimating a lot of opportunities. There are folks, I'm going to guess, I'm just imagining, there are probably some folks who work in media who are listening to this or watching this, and they're looking around, it's like, what the heck's going on in the media industry? Like, I'm like, well, like you're talking, like making eye contact with your producer right there. So I mean, like there's just a lot of stuff that is changing, and we have to evolve very quickly.
We've seen this cycle already, right? With sort of, I think when we had the kind of more the technological revolution coming and people lost their jobs and were not retrained, they then had no purpose. And I think that's part of, with AI, that one of the things that concerns me a lot is around how do we help people have purpose and have dignity too, So I think the kind of this idea of basic needs, I mean, it's a little bit Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like trying to get the bottom part of the triangle.
I'm someone who believes that UBI is inevitable.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I mean, you get there one way or another. And right now, in my opinion, we're on like the painful, arduous, sad path. It's not like I wake up really, pissed off that I'm not president or something, in the sense it's like, I'm not, it's like I ran to try and accelerate the end of poverty.
Right.
But the thing that does upset me is that we could be doing so much better than we are, so much more. And instead we're having these completely unproductive, incoherent arguments about things that are just these tribal symbols. It's like, hey, get mad at this. Like, hey, get animated. This is like, guys, like, this is all a result of a malignant system that is rewarding bad actions and bad activities and bad messaging and bad leadership. And if we can break free of that, then we can do so much more. But right now, like if I come and try and free you, it turns out that, like you have massive institutions that have like very, very vested, entrenched interests and things being as they are, even as they're suffering through it.
I remember one of the things that surprised me, both in my time in DC and then as I kind of accidentally became a public person and saw power through a different lens, looking back at DC, was that from the outside, it looks very much divided by the left and right, but it's really more about power.
Yeah.
And so when you sort of get behind those, I was going to say behind closed doors, I'm like, I don't mean those closed doors that way, but that that really what you see is that it's the chummy people they don't care. They'll golf with whomever, as long as you're sort of, it's about power. And so we get fed a very different narrative outside. Yeah. And so in terms of what you're talking about with being fed by the media and all those things, but you were saying how you weren't sitting there, you're not sitting there being upset that you didn't win the presidency.
On my own account, no, I'm not upset. I mean, I have a good life.
Right.
But I am upset on behalf of the people that we could be helping.
And is that why it's very interesting to me that you were able to pivot so quickly to then run for New York City mayor. And I think, to me, that's one of the interesting aspects too of a reclaiming, in a way, is how do you find that part of yourself again after maybe what might be a big disappointment for some people, and move forward?
Yeah, so I come off the trail in 2020, and I am still very concerned about the future. So I write a book. It's called Forward, Notes on the Future of Our Democracy, and I conclude our two-party system is going to deteriorate and disintegrate, and it's going to lead to very, very bad things. Simultaneously, some people are asking me to consider running for mayor of New York City. And initially I'm hesitant. I was like, look, I have this vision for this national movement. But then I sit down with them and they say, look, we pulled it. You right now have a 10-point lead. This city has a budget of almost $100 billion. Think of the good you could do. And I was like, $100 billion a year. So if I can improve the allocation by only 2%, that's $8 billion worth of good in the next 4 years. And I start out as a favorite. And then I thought too, Monica, it's like I win this race. Then I turn around and declare myself an independent. And that an independent who starts a new party is now the mayor of the biggest city. I was like, okay, I get it. Like that this is something I should do. And that race did not go my way. But then after that, I immediately, to your point, pivoted and was like, well, shoot, like I had, and it was funny. It's like I wrote the book. I had a pretty estimable publisher in Crown. And so Crown was like, hey, they pretty much put the book on hold during my mayoral run. And then as soon as I came off, they're like, okay, so as soon as possible, we'd like you to do a tour and support this book. So I started Forward immediately afterwards. But to your point, and I don't know if this is true of most people, I don't know, but like I've just been working the whole time. And so if I was running for president, it doesn't go my way, then I'm immediately on CNN. I, in that case, endorsed Joe and was campaigning for him. I went to Georgia to help John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock win. I run for mayor. I lose. I go on tour for the book.
Right.
And then you and I meet at TED because I've been hitting the reform message for the last several years. So maybe it's just the way I was raised, or maybe it's, because, like I had people around me who kind of either looked to me or in some cases relied on me because, like I have a team, I have people that need to get paid.
Right. I have a friend who had run for office and it had not gone his way. And
who? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. He's a great guy. So one of the few political people that I think, okay, you're, good guy. But, it's just interesting because I think as his friend, you sort of sit and listen and you think, well, where do you get your advice? Because the people that are presenting you with things and encouraging you to run are dependent on you as like that's an ecosystem. It's funny because, I don't know you well, but just sitting here, I was thinking, I'm like, I'm not sure do you have a big enough ego to be like, in a positive way though, it would be nice to see. Not that I'm saying I'm endorsing you, but it just is I think politics has become so much more personality driven than it needs to be.
Oh, yeah. And that was an education for me, Monica. I wanted to name the campaign UBI 2020. And then I got talked out of it because someone said, look, that sounds like a urinary tract infection. Like no one's going to be into, that. It's got to be Yang 2020. And I was uncomfortable with putting my name on it, putting my face on it, and I had to learn because you're going to fail very, very badly as a presidential candidate if that's your attitude. So I had to become a little bit more, me-centered or me-focused. But I'm not that into myself. I guess to your point. And
I'm going to ask Evelyn.
Please do.
She'll be the arbiter on that.
And I think part of it might be like a cultural thing because as the son of Asian immigrants, they tried to discourage me from being political, honestly.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, I'm very, very grateful to everyone who supported my campaign. But, there were people that were really drawn into like just a very, very different type of vision or approach.
Thanks so much to Audible, our presenting sponsor. Are you looking for your next big thrill? Audible's got you covered with all kinds of adventure right at your fingertips. Whether you're into heart-racing mysteries, epic quests, or fantasy, they've got stories that'll keep you hooked. You'll love diving into gripping titles that keep you guessing until the final moment. Experience exclusive, captivating Audible originals you won't find anywhere else. Want to know what everyone will be talking about before they're talking about it? Be the first to hear anticipated new releases and discover must-listen bestsellers that will grab your attention. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat on Audible. Start your adventure today. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com/reclaiming. That's audible.com/reclaiming. Thanks so much to our sponsor, Reformation. I want to take a second to talk about one of my favorite clothing brands, Reformation. You've probably seen Reformation on Instagram or at a wedding. They make the best guesting dresses. But if you're like me, you may have thought that's all they do. Well, you're in for a pleasant surprise. Last year, they worked with yours truly and Vote.org on a campaign to empower voters to take part in the democratic process and show off their workwear. From doing the campaign and getting to know the brand even better, I love their sweaters, blouses, workwear, shoes, and bags. But most important, I love how confident I feel in their stuff. Plus, it really holds up since they make everything with super high-quality, sustainable materials. Reformation is also a brand that uses their growing platform to do good in the world, and especially in the sustainable fashion space. As they say, being naked is the #1 most sustainable option. Reformation is #2. If you're looking for clothes you want to feel great in and feel better about, head to reformation.com. I'm very open to the idea of more than 2 parties. So whether it's 3, whether it's 5.
The ideal number is probably closer to 5, but continue. Yeah.
What I worry about is that it seems almost as if every election cycle, there's something that is making it feel too risky. That there's some label put on this election of this is going to
be the most important.
Right, exactly. Yeah. This is the most impactful, and therefore, so I don't know, is it, do you think about, or is this already happening and I just don't know, that it's like trying to sort of put this idea forward in smaller ways in local and state?
Yeah. So there are 47 elected officials who are aligned with the Forward Party. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, totally. And we actually are focused more on the local. Again, I'm just imagining our listeners are in LA, but
they're everywhere. We have listeners all over the world.
Yeah. But I'll give you an example. The current mayor of Detroit is a guy named Mike Duggan, and he's very popular in a majority black city. He was a Democrat until recently. He decided to run for governor of Michigan, and he's doing so as an independent. Great leader, great guy, could be an awesome independent governor. And so we're getting behind him. There are people like him running in races around the country. And something that you just did, which is totally natural because 99% of people do it, is they just think third party equals presidential run.
Right.
So what I'm pointing out is like, look, we have mayors, we have city councilmen, we have state senators, we have a member of Congress, we have a U.S. senator who are at least affiliated with us in some way. Some of them are just out and out like, look, I'm a forwardist. That's all I am. I'm like, not either team blue or team red. And there are 500,000 local offices around the country. So we could get up to 500, 1,000, 2,000 elected officials and not even be touching the presidential. Now, I happen to think that the presidential is something that we should maybe take a look at some point, because I don't think that either party is set to deliver. And again, earlier in this convo, I said, it's like,
right.
Look, the Democrats, let's say you're an ardent Democrat, and I have many, many friends who are ardent Democrats. You'd have to answer the math problem. It's like, what can you do if you don't have the U.S. Senate? So if your goal is to get the various things done, I'm just someone who wants good things for people, like red, blue, purple, whatever. And I'm now convinced that the best path to get there is through some kind of positive independent political movement, but it would be local first.
Were you this empathetic as a kid? Like, have you just always sort of been very compassion oriented and enthusiastic?
I was a bookworm. I would just read science fiction and fantasy novels and a lot of Native American biographies, which all tended to end the same way, which was sad. I certainly had a thing for the underdog as a kid because I was somewhat ignored or picked on as a kid. I'd skipped a grade, so I was always scrawnier than other kids. And I was one of the only Asian kids in the school, which I have to admit they reminded me of. They let me know. So I had a thing for the little guy. It was only later that I thought I might be able to do something. But what's funny, Monica, and you've had this experience too, I bet, is that as you start trying to do things and you kind of gain more experience and traction and exposure, you look at the other people who are trying to do things and you're like, oh my gosh, like, like you're no different than I am, or in some cases, like frankly, I think I might be able to do a little better than you. It's true even for your reclaiming message. It's like there is no better carrier of that message than Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's true. If there was someone else doing the math thing in American politics, maybe I'd just be there clapping. But, as it is, it's me. Someone's like, oh, shoot. I guess I'll try and do my best.
Yeah. Did you have a point, sometimes some kids are, like I was lightly bullied in grade school. And then I had a little bit in the beginning of high school because it was more, it's more being ostracized. Did that change for you in high school or college?
I think it shifted gears somewhat in high school, but I had like this real chip on my shoulder. And again, it was always a year younger. And so for me, I think the real shift probably happened before I got to college. Like I started going to the gym and having this real kind of like physical development impulse. But even then, I was still somewhat like angry or sad. There are pictures of me on the internet that, kind of speak to this, but I listened to The Cure and the Smiths and it was kind of mopey, very angsty.
Yeah.
And then grunge. So, that gives you a sense of it.
Yeah.
I got to meet Robert Smith at The
Cure concerts in my day, so
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Gen
X.
So it persisted. One of the things that did animate my deciding to run for president was this sense, like, I don't know, there was like a still like a bit of a chip on my shoulder, I suppose. And like I feel like the chip is kind of faded somewhat.
Or does it to me it sounds more like the chip became collective, that it was in the sense that if you might have had this chip on your shoulder about how you were being treated, that chip became about how everyone was being treated.
Yeah, like so you asked about the empathy. Like I met, thousands and thousands of people on the trail, and it was very easy to root for all of them. It's like they would just be like a family struggling in New Hampshire or Ohio or Iowa, all walks of life. I mean, some of them were avid Trump supporters, but they were still great people, and they just wanted a better life for themselves and their families, and they would hear me out. And then at the end of it, they might say, it's like, hey, I wish you luck. I'm going to be voting for Trump, but so it's good talking to you. Like a million different stories. But maybe you're right that I had a chip on my shoulder for them, because a lot of those people feel very, very shut out, very voiceless. I'd say the average Democrat right now is like feeling that way, where you look up and be like, what the heck can we do?
So what can we do?
Well, what can we do? Right now, the guidance I have for people is, look, let's try and fix the rotten core of this system. Like, I prefer good people over bad people. I prefer people I agree with over people I disagree with. So, it's like, do I support local candidates at every level, most of whom are running as Democrats? Yeah, I do. It's like I have the text on my phone to prove it. But the bulk of my energy is towards trying to create like mechanics and a positive alternative that will free us, because until then we will not be free of the system. And I would say to folks, before November 24, and by the way, if you check the tape, I was also jumping up and down saying we need to have a primary for Joe Biden, because I thought him running unopposed was just like idiotic. And the fact that Democrats weren't willing to say that, I was like, look, and again, like, I'm the numbers guy. It's like, guys, historically unpopular, historically old, running him again is a terrible idea. And someone please show me some numbers that say something different. And like, just, it's like I was, like speaking another language.
Yeah.
So in terms of what we can do, it's do the things you're probably doing right now, but then also try and fix some of the structural problems. What that means in real life, honestly, is go to forwardparty.com, join Forward, and then let's help people win the little races and then just keep on climbing up. And then maybe you even can have a shot at something like the U.S. Senate, because you have independent figures like Dan Osborne running in places like Nebraska that might not line up with you on everything, but that's not the point anymore. There are folks that like you and I disagree on like we're all being manipulated, we're all being sold, we're all just being bilked of our money. Like, it doesn't matter. If you and I can agree on the basics, then we're fine.
Well,
Like we could work from there.
Right, because there's six pillars to the Forward Party, right?
Yeah.
And you want to tell them to us?
No, I mean there are things that you would think would be common sense, like rule of law.
Right. Right.
But it's also respect other people's points of view and like agree to work with people that you might not agree with on everything. On the one thing you can agree with, like let's go on that. So it's very benign principles that are actually kind of tough to adhere to in this polarized environment.
There's this great quote from when you were on Rainn Wilson's Soul Boom.
Oh, yeah.
It was, quote, "We're in a period of societal disintegration marked by massive income inequality, mistrust of government and media. Eventually, we will come back. Societies do come back around. But my take is you can believe all of this doomed to be true and still feel it's worth your time to come up with ideas to make things better." So for those of us who are truly worried about democracy now, just the ideas for us to how to start reclaiming the democracy and the decency and dignity.
Now, you want to reward people who are doing the right things and, often doing the right things in this context, Monica, is like doing the thing that's difficult within your own party. The easy thing is for me to be like, hey, I'm going to throw rocks and tell you how bad the other people are. I might even agree that the other people are bad. But like that kind of behavior actually is not going to move us along. You know what would have moved us along if you'd had the courage to look at the leader of your own party in January of 2024 and say, hey, like this is not a good idea. I love you, voted for you, like, in my case, like was a surrogate for you, campaigned for you, but this is not a good idea. So reward the people who are trying to do the right thing in the face of their own tribe and their own party. And like that's the kind of thing that will give us a chance. And I talked about how my TED Talk didn't work. That those ballot initiatives did not pass in November 24, and that was also heartbreaking. I mean, things that people I admire a great deal, and me too, worked on for years to try and give us a chance to cure the rotten incentives in, let's call it 6 states. And then if that had worked, you'd have had 12 U.S. senators who didn't have primaries anymore, and then Pete Hegseth does not get confirmed. Kash Patel does not get confirmed. Like you have senators who'd be like, oh, I get to actually say what I want for a change. Because right now, by the way, I also happen to know pretty directly a lot of those Republican senators weren't fans of some of these these appointees, but then they were like, well, if I vote against them, I'm going to end my own career. So let me just go along with the party on this. And then you take that and multiply it times 100 other decisions. And that's why we feel the way we do right now. That we feel that way because people know they're going to end their careers if they do the right thing. And that's what we have to change.
That is very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about you just said it,
Sure.
But I mean, it is that people know they're going to end their careers if they do the right thing.
Yes, that is why we are where we are. And we can only be in a better place if people will actually enhance and further their careers by doing the right thing instead of the thing they know is not what the country needs.
With AI, I was thinking about, because you were, I think a lot of UBI that you talked about connected to AI and coming, but when you were talking about it, for the majority of people, we didn't have Chat GPT on our phone yet.
Yep.
And so, and I don't know about here in New York, but in LA, we have Waymo and we have these little Coco delivery robots. And so I just was wondering if the kind of almost the concretization, like the ability to see these things, you see the app, you now see this driverless car. Do you think that sort of the automation that comes from those things and AI, do you think that will impact how people think about UBI now?
Yeah. I think that when it's your job and your community impacted, then it becomes much more real. And then if someone says, look, not your fault, like you could be the best limo driver, the worst limo driver, like the robot car is going to replace you either way. By the way, I got the sequencing. So I directionally, I was correct when I was running in 2020. But I got the sequencing wrong because ChatGPT and the large language models are going to disrupt white-collar work more than blue-collar work. And there are some heartbreaking stats around what's happening to recent college graduates who are trying to get into various fields. So this has become an everyone problem. UBI is inevitable in my view because the evidence will just be too strong. But I do want to present this vision, and this is a vision that I don't often share. So people would ask me, and you said something, Monica, that's very much in this direction, was, look, like you want people to have structure, purpose, fulfillment, community, and there's a sense that like a certain amount of money doesn't actually solve those problems, which is totally true. You know what? One thing that very much helps with those gaps is something called a job, or something that looks sort of like a job. The problem is that most of the jobs that we're doing right now, or at least many of them, about 44% of them to be precise, are not going to be economically viable after AI really gets going. And so if you use capital efficiency as your measuring stick for that job existing, or that person's activities being worth a certain amount, then the person loses. And 6 years ago, there was like this nonsense argument. It's like, no, but if they're just like strong and like reskill and like, you know, have high character, it's like, no, none of that stuff matters. Like the technology it doubles in capacity every 7 months. And we do not. You know, I joke that like we did that once when we were 2 years old. After that we stopped.
Right.
So what you need to do is you need to build a new economy around arts and creativity would be one category. Health and wellness would be a second category. And then caring, nurturing, and education would be a third category. And then people who facilitate these forms of human flourishing actually get rewarded in a new currency. And so my campaign manager during the presidential made me swear never to talk to this, because it's like, look, it's hard enough getting people on board with the magical Asian man from the future who wants to give everyone money and says AI is going to come and eat your job. Like, it's hard enough. But when you start saying like, you know, new economies, new currencies, like new ways of measuring and rewarding human flourishing, like you lose everybody. So you can never speak of it. But that is the direction we should be going as quickly as possible, because AI is going to do a number on millions, tens of millions of jobs. We're going to go crazy as a result. We're going to elect lunatics as a result. And then, you know, the only way out of it is to come clean and be like, okay, guys, like this economy is about to turn on us because it's become very, very punitive and inhuman. And so we have to humanize it, but it's not going to humanize itself if you use the market as your arbiter of human value.
Right.
There was a lot there.
Interesting. Did you see there was a TED Talk in 2022, Aaron Bastani. So when he talked about universal basic services.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting talk too. So I think he was talking about with universal basic services providing housing, transportation, education, and healthcare to everybody versus sort of an income. Is that...
It's very much related.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are a number of ways to try and guide the energies and resources towards housing, healthcare, education. You know, I was frankly just trying to simplify it.
Right.
The
Sure.
campaign was like, look, give you money and then the market will follow. But there are other ways to deliver it. I mean, I'm really heartened. Did you see... or have you read, because I'm sure you're nerdy like me, the new Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson book, Abundance?
So I saw it on a list, but I have not read it, and I don't know anything about it, but I'm always intrigued by the word abundance.
Yes.
So,
well, so that they're trying to move our public sector towards like higher levels of ability to deliver some of the services that Bastiani is talking about, and so I'm very encouraged by it, because it's like a modern, smart take on why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
But also their critique was much more internal, because they're liberals and they say subconsciously, look, we live in California and DC, and so we're actually going to be critiquing the blue cities and the Democratic Party. It's like, why can't we deliver some of the things that maybe we kind of thought we could by now? And I'm sure, some of your friends and neighbors in LA can relate to aspects of that. It's like, hey, like, our taxes are kind of high. Like,
right,
like,
exactly.
Where's
the water in the fire hydrants
exactly.
when we need it?
Yeah. Where's the reservoir or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Look, I'm a data guy. The data says we're going to be in for some very, very rough, rocky times. But do societies come back? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But
you know,
I was pretty terrified. I listened to your book, the 2018 one, and I'm embarrassed to say I went back to check 3 times when it was published and that it was 2018 and not post 2020. And so you in the book you were talking about really, I think, prophesizing based on data that you'd seen, based on philosophers, based on historians, that, and already we've seen so many of those things happen. The divide of race and income inequality and the increase in violence. And that was pretty terrifying to sort of listen to. And I know the latter half of the book is the more positive part.
I try.
So, one of the reasons I was also drawn to the topic of reclaiming for these conversations is because I feel like it's an umbrella term that, you have something, you lose it, the losing, you have the grief. Going through the grief process, you then have to be resilient. Then from resilience, you need strategy and optimism. And ultimately, your triumph, like until you've triumphed, you haven't reclaimed, right? But so it is, I think there's just this element of, needing resilience, needing optimism, how to, I was reading something that was talking about learned helplessness, and that's, I think, led to a lot of apathy that people are feeling right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's certainly been a very, very up and down last number of years for me on every level. And I did write that book in 2018, and I forecast some very, very nasty things.
Yeah.
And it made me sad writing it because when I was writing that book, I didn't know what I was going to find. Like, and then really when...
Oh, really? Oh, like you went into it. So you went into it with an idea and then it was in the researching. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I went into it. So Trump wins in 2016. I'm the head of a very wholesome nonprofit called Venture for America. And I think, oh my gosh, like this was a surprise. And then I said, I think it's because we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs. Mm-hmm. Let me go see. And so then I spent months doing research and wrote what became that book. And then the conclusion of the book, I was like, oh my gosh, like these are gonna like this is like really like even I self-consciously had to be like, okay guys, it's getting kind of bleak. Let me sort of like, give us some solutions. I don't even know people who've decided to listen to this, and thank you for that. I don't know if I seem positive or negative. Like, it's like I'm an optimist by action, and I think by disposition and everything. Like I try and mm-hmm. Be a good husband and father and friend and colleague and all of that stuff. But I also don't try and shy away from what I think is coming or the facts say. But you have to be optimistic in what you can do. And I'm going to put you in this category too, Monica. Like I feel like I'm in a category of people who might be able to help. And then you think, okay, like let me do my best. And then also just take the blessings that come with pursuing this kind of service.
I think one of the most surprising things to me of my last decade was being able to see and experience and feel what it meant to use my past pain to help other people, like to help ease other people's suffering, to sort of hear stories from people and to have felt so purposeless for so long, to kind of have an experience like that. It is it's such a privilege. And it's something that you would, in the same way that we think about privacy, but we never think about anonymity and what it means to lose anonymity. I don't think we ever think about the privilege it is to be able to help ease other people's suffering.
Like an Asian American family would take a picture with me in New Hampshire or on the road. And then one of them would said to me, like, thank you, we didn't know we were allowed to run for president.
Wow.
And so I was like, whoa, it's like heady. And so you like you said, it's a privilege that you have to try and make the most of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the last question I like to ask people is, what is something that you are working on reclaiming? And it could be anything from, an aspect of your identity or a thing or an issue, anything.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to say two things.
Okay.
And I'm working on something for each of these things because that's the way I'm wired. So number one, I'm working on getting a healthier relationship with my phone.
Okay.
Because you have, social media and email, obviously, and all these other things. It's like, oh, I need to do work. And then you find yourself not being able to get through a dinner without like being distracted, not being able to help your kid with their homework without being distracted. And I know I'm not alone in this. So I want to reclaim my state of mind, my clarity, my freedom from technology. And I'm working on a company to help people do this that's going to launch this summer, codenamed Noble.
Okay.
So keep an eye out for that. And then the other thing is I want to reclaim, though I don't know how this interview came across, whatever, but I want to reclaim my sense of humor.
Oh, I thought you were funny.
Oh, well, thank you. But like, there were all of these times during the like media circuit and everything where it became very serious. And so I'm working on a book of comedic reflections. No joke. I know. So
April
even it's
Fool's
making
was
you laugh.
yesterday, so but
And it's making you laugh. So it's called Hey Yang, Where's My $1,000? And it will be coming out next year. So I'm working on that.
That's very cool. Did you have to curtail or be more mindful of your humor when you were running?
No, Monica, it was funny. It actually kind of emerged because of that need to compete and get likes on your, so I mean, it's terrible to say, but that is true. It's like that. I was just like, just trying to get people to like posts or like this. And then if you were serious all the time, then be like, yeah. But then if you said something funny or irreverent or glib or referenced popular culture, then people are like, oh.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first started Twitter in 2014, probably the first 6 months, I would not post a tweet without having 3 people look at it. I labored over every single word. And there had been a woman, Laura Cohen, who worked at Twitter, who sort of helped me onboard me or whatever. And we became friendly. And at some point she said, you're funny. You should actually be funny on Twitter and let people see that you're funny. And so I started to kind of, show my humor petticoat a little bit. And it becomes very intoxicating when people laugh, and it does. And I love to tell this story, but just that the best part of it for me is my brother has had to acknowledge that I'm funny now. So
yay.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your coming in and your time. And I appreciate your wanting to make our country better.
Oh, thank you, Monica. It was great to be with you. And let's keep people reclaiming whatever it is that they, that they want or that they might have lost.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks.